Hey, juniors, welcome to remote APUS history learning. I'm really excited to see y'all's faces, see the work that you do. I really, really miss all of you, as much as sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to go home and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the point of today is just to sort of introduce how I want the class to work online. And then I'm going to show you an example of like some Cornell notes and stuff that I want to give you. Okay. Remote learning at home. So by now you should have gotten a call, text, something from your advisor, and they should have information if like you don't have your Chromebook or everything. But obviously for this class, you're going to need a Chromebook. You're going to need to be able to listen to videos, things like that. Okay. So first things first, I want you to pause this video. And in Google Classroom, where you can see this video and the assignment is posted, I want you to take the remote learning survey, just so I can like see how you're doing, you know, if you're alive and stuff like that. I'm going to move on. I'm going to assume that you pause the video so then I can keep going. Cool. What have I been doing? Nothing very exciting. I got into the Tiger King craze and watched that whole thing. It was wild. When Governor Polis said we had to make masks, I sat down and made masks so I can wear them to different places. I've been walking my dog probably like 20 times a day, so she's definitely like irritated with me at this point and is done with walking, I think. Right, Zeph? No, she's so cute. Okay, so that's what I've been doing. I'm excited to see in your surveys what you've been doing. Okay, so here's some things with APUS History Remote Learning Schedule. So you are expected to do my work every Wednesday and Friday. Most of the time, it'll be a little mini lecture, because you know I like to chat. And then assignments will be posted in Google Classroom with some sort of list of what you're supposed to do. I'm going to have office hours from 2:45 to 3:45. That'll be your chance to ask me for help. If you're like writing a DBQ, need some feedback, need some thesis stuff, you show up there. You can also always like email me throughout the day. Anything that you need throughout the day, feel free to let me know. Assignments will vary, but you're most likely going to be doing some of the following. So reading and prepping for reading ACT. Since y'all are taking the ACT June 13th, got to make sure we are on track for that. Practicing writing, we're going to really, really focus and emphasize the DBQ. But we're also going to do some LEQ and short answers, but not as much as the DBQ, and I'll explain why later. Analyzing historical documents is part of your DBQ. You're going to be listening to lectures and taking notes per usual. There will be a quiz most of the time to make sure that you're taking those notes. And then I would like to end the year with some sort of class discussion, but I have to figure out how to make that work. As a side note, you had 2 extra credit assignments for spring break. They're extra credit, so they weren't mandatory. But some of you kind of still want to keep doing that stuff, I guess, you know, whatever. You don't have to. But those are going to be due Friday, April 17th. A lot of you have turned some stuff in this week, or towards the end of last week. So I'm still kind of working my way through and putting those grades in. If you didn't do either, it won't affect your grade necessarily. You just won't get a grade for it, if that makes sense. Cool. Actually, let me show you how the classes will work on Google Classroom. Okay. So when you go to your classroom, right, you go and you see all your cool classes. I made a fake classroom for today. You'll go in and then you go to classwork, and then I will put the date. So when it's posted, I'll give you some sort of like to do, like an order, steps, and then everything will be down here. So this is what you're going to see in Google Classroom for today. Obviously, the video is not posted yet because I'm making that now, but the video will be posted with the link below. Cool. Let's go back. I do want to go over some classroom expectations. I'm going to have to move myself around, I guess. The first expectation is pretty simple. You need to try your best on your assignments. I am still going to grade you. Like, that is, you're still in school. You still have a path to college. I still am going to hold that high bar. The most of you are successful because you try your best. And I've said it before that I am truly impressed with this junior class and your guys' ability to like sit there and let something that's really challenging actually be something you try to figure out instead of giving up. If you have any questions, though, email me. Don't leave comments because I can't see them as easily. Please email me. And then I'm going to be like sitting at my computer, or if not, I'll have my phone on me, right? And I should be able to respond pretty quickly. Please make your questions super clear. So for example, if you're like, I don't get the DBQ prompt, I'm going to say, well, what don't you get? And we're going to have like a sort of back and forth in the email. That's okay. I'm just going to give you feedback if your questions are not strong enough for me to like answer well right at the beginning. So just be ready for that feedback. The next thing is to be respectful. I'm going to try to give you some opportunities to comment and chat with each other in class. From all of this, for the past 3 weeks, I've been on Twitter a lot, and people have no online etiquette. Like, they think because they are online, they can say whatever they want. That will not be the case here. So just because you're online and in theory I can't see you and your peers can't see you, that does not mean you get to be disrespectful. So the good rule of thumb, if it's something you can't say to someone's face, don't say it online. If I interpret something to not be respectful, I'm going to have a conversation with you and it could impact your grade, right? So like, I'll come and have that convo with you, but it matters to me that we are respectful online, just like we are in class. I have no worries about this. Plagiarism won't be tolerated. You're going to have quite a few writing assignments, and it will be tempting to look up. I've seen you guys do it in class, to look up things, like look up what other people have written, look up other stuff. Don't do this. We are too late in the year. You need to start doing your own writing. It doesn't really help you when you do that. When you're turning in assignments, I will be taking the time to compare what you've turned in with what I know is online. And I will check it to the word. So I really, really want to nip this in the bud. Like, we are not plagiarizing at all. If things are too similar and I consider it to be plagiarism, you will get a 0 on the assignment. Just a straight up 0. So I know this is tricky. I know writing is hard. I really want you to reach out to me, if need be your peers. I really, really do not want any sort of plagiarism at all. Like, at this point, it's not even a conversation. We know what plagiarism is. Cool. Next thing, every assignment needs to be turned in. Assignments are going to be due the next day at 8 a.m. like they are. So for example, take my class Wednesday, Thursday at 8 a.m. I'm going to be looking and see who turned things in. If it's not turned in, you won't get graded, and you're also going to be counted as absent from class. So it's really, really essential that you turn your assignments in. Sorry, very noisy in Denver apparently right now. The last thing is reach out. You may be isolated from me and your peers, but you are not alone. I will be here whenever you need me, and your peers will too, in theory, because they're going to be online. Obviously, I don't want y'all asking each other for answers or like copying each other's work, but feel free to chat with each other about assignments, just like you would in class, right? Like, when we are doing those DBQs, sometimes you all would kind of sit there and like whisper chat with each other, make sure you're on the same page. If that's what you need to do, that's fine. Just if DBQs look too similar, I'm going to have a little bit of an issue with that. Okay, cool. You are still having an AP US History exam. Here's some details with it. So it is Friday, March 15th, or not March 15th, oh my God, May 15th at 12 p.m. It's an open book, open note exam, which is a pretty big deal. I'm going to have to like analyze that more to figure out how to help y'all prepare for having an open book, open note exam, but that's insane. It's going to be just one modified DBQ. Modified because it's only 45 minutes long. Normally for a DBQ, you would get about 60 minutes. And then some of the guidelines for this are here. The good news is we've spent so much time on DBQs that I feel like really good and confident that it's only a DBQ thing. The bad news perhaps is we still need to spend so much more time on DBQs. If it's going to be just DBQ, I want to make sure that you are going in feeling ready to rock and roll and do well on it. So we are going to be doing a lot of DBQ stuff, a lot of writing, a lot of document analysis for the next month. So go ahead and prep yourself for that. Okay. I want to now talk about Cornell notes, because you are going to take some of those as you're listening to my lectures. So I'm going to kind of go over some things. After this, I hope that you are able to see how to get to assignments in Google Classroom, see how I want you to take notes, and then in theory, see how to turn in these notes. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Okay, so when you go to Google Classroom, I've made a Cornell Notes template. And you should be able to type everything in there. So for example, like you can put your name, all that stuff. Same thing as before. I want you to do questions, and then I want you to do some online notes. Headings are important because if you have the slides, make sure you're doing those headings with that as well. Okay. I'm going to go through this lecture as if I was doing a lecture. What I want you to do is take notes. Then you're going to see my notes and kind of compare the formatting of it so that you can make sure it's something that I want. Okay. So I figured my little quick mini lecture would be something about current times. So I'm doing a quick little mini lecture about COVID. Is it a repeat of history, or what lessons have we learned from history before that we can see now? I think before we left, I kept telling y'all, like, this is crazy. This is unprecedented. I've never seen something like this. And even me, I was like, well, it can't be that bad, right? Things escalated. So just to kind of have an intro for COVID, the history of the start for this disease was that in late December and early January, in China, health officials were reporting some pretty strange cases of pneumonia that they weren't quite sure what was going on. It was officially decided from China and the World Health Organization. This is like an international organization responsible for health around the globe, or trying to work in partnerships for health, decided that it was corona, and they've identified cases elsewhere. So in the map, right, starts in China, and then it started kind of dispersing out. The first US case was January 21st, so quite a while ago. 9 days after that, January 30th, the World Health Organization declared it a global emergency and was worrying about a pandemic, which means that it's going to spread across the globe and affect multiple different places. In response to that, January 31st, the US started banning entry, in particular to Chinese vacationers or anyone coming from China. And then you kind of see the spread. So it starts in China. They went into quarantine, and now China's like slowly starting to open back up, moved to Italy, and most of Europe. And then now we're seeing it over here on the North American continent, right? So kind of an inevitable spread, to be honest with you, with globalization. It is what it is. This past week in the United States, New York City seems to be the place that's been hit particularly hard. So how does this matter for history? I think it's interesting to see the state versus federal response in this, and we're going to combine it with what we're going to do next week, yeah? So the question is, who is responsible for things? The U.S. Constitution has federalism in it, which essentially means that the federal government and states have equal power. The idea of that is that the federal government can't turn into like some sort of dictatorship and start telling people what to do. That being said, federalism becomes kind of tricky in times of crisis. When you have like wars, for example, or economic downturns, like who is responsible for taking care of the citizens? Is it the government as a whole, the states? How do they divide it up, kind of thing? Most of the time in wars, you see the federal government take a pretty big role because wars are about defense, and the federal government, has defense, like they run the military. So a lot of people are trying to like compare this response to war. I don't think that's the best way to do it, because I feel like wars in general, the federal government will take a larger response. And if they don't, that's weird. So I want to compare it to the Great Depression and the response to that, which is what we're going to talk about next week. So let's start with right now. Once this crisis started sort of heating up, a lot of states started seeing like, oh, we don't have enough resources and things. We need to take some measures to make sure people aren't getting sick and all that stuff. So what you see is a lot of states started taking some own action within their own realm, their own boundaries, right? So for example, this is our governor, Governor Jared Polis. He put a stay-at-home order. He closed restaurants. He closed like salons. Like, I can't get my hair done. You know what I mean? And then last week, he's encouraging people to wear masks. Like, those are all state decisions. If you go to Utah, Utah is not doing the same thing. So all the states have some sort of different things, which in general kind of makes sense. A lot of people are really scared of the federal government overreaching and giving too much power, so they're putting it on states to do things. Where it gets tricky is resources. So if you hear anything about the news, the biggest concern that people have is lack of resources. So lack of ventilators, which helps people if they're struggling with breathing, lack of protective wear for doctors and nurses, and in fact, like lack of doctors and nurses themselves. And so it's been pretty intense trying to figure out how this is going to work. A lot of states are looking to the federal government to decide how those resources should be distributed. So the federal government should be trying to figure out how to get a lot of ventilators, how to get a lot of masks from other countries, wherever, right? And then they need to make these choices for the states. Right now, the federal government is saying that's not their job. So the federal government is saying, states, it's on you to decide how to get these resources. This has created a little bit of frustration for states because they are now competing with each other. For example, in Colorado, there was an order, we had an order of ventilators, like 500 or something. Someone else decided to take it and they like bought it. It's also making it tricky because Colorado is now like dealing directly with other countries, like getting exports from China for masks. And they're trying to like make sure they have enough money and make sure that they can actually acquire those. So this is an interesting sort of time because there's a crisis. American citizens are clearly being affected. Every single person is. And the question is, who is responsible for getting involved? Which brings me to the Great Depression, which we'll talk about next week. So the Great Depression was the largest economic downturn in U.S. history. Besides now, I don't know, it seems like pretty crazy now, but whatever. And initially, the response from the federal government was very much like, states, you handle this. States, you help your people. States, you make sure they get food, place to live, yada, yada. That's until this dude, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR. He came in and very much transformed the federal government through a lot of things. For example, like managing the distribution of resources, of programs, instituting laws, and really being like that figurehead person that people look to see what was going to happen. In fact, I would say like his response to the Great Depression has totally fundamentally changed Americans' views of the government. A lot of people until about the 1980s views the US government as like the federal government as like it is their job to support citizens and do things like that, which we will learn more about that next week. Okay, so hopefully you've taken some notes. I know I talk fast, so feel free to give me some feedback, and always, as always, pause. I'm going to show you what I would do if I were taking notes for my own lecture. So here you go. Cool. So making sure you have like your title, you have the date. We're gonna be in Unit 6 for eternity because like I don't know what I'm doing. And then you have your name, obviously. The thing I want to note here is that I don't really care how this looks as long as it is somewhat organized and you have heading. So I put the headings here and then I was doing like bullet points down here for each line. I do want you to do questions. So we're going to do 3 questions per lecture. This lecture was super short, so we're just going to do 1 question together, but 3 questions per lecture so I can make sure you are actually interacting with your notes instead of like just sitting here doing nothing. You know what I mean? So I think a question is 2 things. I'm going to change it up a little. You can either answer it in your notes or it's something that you would want to look at in the future, perhaps, right? Like, or something that might be interesting that you want to look more for. Okay, so I'm going to say something like, under what president did the federal government role increase significantly, right? And that's something that you could find in here. And then that's an example of a question that works for me. Another question that works could be something like, oh, I'm going to think more to the future and think about how to solve this. It's like, what made the federal government's role decrease over time after the Great Depression? Because we are going to just continue learning more. Yeah. So that's in theory a question that you can answer on your own. Cool. So this is what your notes would look like. The last thing I want to talk about is turning assignments in. So I can't see this from my page. So if you're having issues with this, let me know and we can figure out like doing a web conference or something like that. But when you have lessons due, so I'm just going to go to B-Day period 3, and you have an assignment, right? I can see who's turned things in and who hasn't. So for example, I see Han has turned something in, and then 24 of you have not. When you open up the assignment, did Adon do it? No. Adon, come on, man. Anyway, you'll have all these things. And then when you're here, like when you have the classwork here, there will be some sort of option for turning it in or marking it done or saying that it's done. I want you to turn every single thing in because that's what I'm really going to look for to see if things are turned in. For this first go around, like next week when we're doing things, I'll probably like reach out to you one-on-one before I freak out about attendance and being like, where are you? And making sure you understand the turning in. But after that, it's going to be like on you to make sure that you're turning stuff in. It's a pretty simple thing that you need to do that most of you guys do. Whew. Okay. I'm going to say that we are good to go here. I'm excited for us to get back into doing some history stuff. And I hope all of you are doing well. And please reach out if you need anything from me at any point, history related or not, I suppose, whatever. And I'll see you guys later.